I'm honored to serve this church as its lead minister. I am delighted that you're with us. If you are new to our community, or if you're checking us out online for the first time, let me just say thank you. Thank you for coming. If you want to connect with a real person after you watch this service, be sure to watch for information about how to reach us at the end of the service. We will be glad to call you. I have lit the chalice, which is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith. If you would like to light your chalice along with me, I invite you to do so. Come into the circle of love and justice. Come into the community of mercy, holiness, and health. Come, and you shall know peace and joy.
Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Hi, and good morning. Late Happy Mother's Day from last week, and welcome to Flower Communion Sunday today. So this works perfectly with my story today. It's titled The Three Flower Princesses, and it's by Dezelm, which can be found on the Your Story Club blog website. Here we go. Once upon a time, there were three princesses named Dawn, Zion, and Trinity. Dawn and Zion were twins, and Trinity was the youngest. These princesses were called the Flower Princesses. Trinity could draw vivid flowers, and Dawn could color and arrange the flowers, and Zion could make the flowers come to life. One day, their mother Anya told the twin princesses she was going to teach them how to grow birthday flowers for Trinity's birthday. Only a princess can make these magical flowers grow. Zion and Dawn were very excited and ready to make these birthday flowers for Trinity's birthday. Every morning, the twin princesses, Dawn and Zion, would get up with their mother to try to make the birthday flowers. But because they could not get the drawing part right, the twins began to give up after 5 days. When Queen Anya heard the word the princesses were giving up, she sent Shri and Nakia to help the princesses with the trouble. The two advisors explain to Dawn and Zion the problem was not because they could not draw, but because they were thinking too much on trying to create a perfect flower. The drawing part of the flower has to come without thinking the flower is not perfect, but to know the flower is already perfect. So, the next day was Trinity's birthday, and Dawn and Zion got up early once again to begin to restart the birthday flowers for Trinity. Instead of thinking on how a perfect birthday flower should look like, the prince began to let their hearts draw the perfect birthday flowers, and the flowers began to grow. When Princess Trinity woke up, the two princesses, Dawn and Zion, gave Trinity her birthday flowers. Princess Trinity was happy because she knew the birthday flowers were perfect. As she smiled, she whispers to her sisters, "I knew you could do it." Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Pandemic.
What if you thought of it as the Jews considered the Sabbath?
The most sacred of times.
Cease from travel.
Cease from buying and selling.
Give up just for now on trying to make the world different than it is.
Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life.
Center down.
And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart.
Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful.
You could hardly deny it now.
Know that our lives are in one another's hands.
Surely that has come clear.
Do not reach out your hands. Reach out your heart.
Reach out your words.
Reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch.
Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live.
Every month at Eliot Chapel, we split our offering with a local organization that promotes our Unitarian Universalist values. In May, we are supporting Project Backpack. Project Backpack has been serving at-risk children in St. Louis since 1999. They provide area groups like police departments, social service agencies, domestic violence shelters, etc., with backpacks filled with necessities and comfort items. The backpacks are delivered to children at the scene where they're needed, and they make a huge difference for children who are being removed from their homes, usually with nothing but the clothes on their backs, in cases of domestic violence, abuse, neglect, homelessness, natural disaster, and other situations. Please give generously. Your gift makes a difference. There are instructions for giving on your screen.
Crabgrass by Lynn Unger. We've all admired it, even as we've cursed the matted roots, white fingers pointing towards new frontiers, the tangled tapestry stubbornly weaving the world into place. Imagine living that way. Imagine knowing from the ground up that you are tied to the whole, that you are undefeatable, that even below the surface, undefinable discoveries are always taking place. Don't you think there are things worth holding on to with 1,000 arms? 10,000 gripping toes? Aren't the undaunted particularly blessed? Before you deride the faithful, consider carefully where you will put your roots.
When Jesus of Nazareth served the disciples the Last Supper, he said to them, "Take, eat. This is my body, which was broken for you. This is my blood, which was spilled for your sake. Do this in memory of me." Now, some Christian traditions interpret this to mean that the elements of the communion, the bread and the wine, literally became Jesus' flesh and blood, or become so when they are consecrated. I encountered this when I was doing chaplaincy training one summer in seminary, and one of my patients asked me to serve her communion. I wanted to minister to this woman, so I said, sure, I could do that. I rigged together something from the old red Unitarian hymnal from the 1940s. They still had Christian communion services in them. I found some Mogan David wine from the Passover left over in our Unitarian church refrigerator. And I got some communion wafers from one of my fellow chaplains, as a man who was training to be an Episcopal priest. And it went pretty well. I think that it did mean a lot to my patient. But afterwards was when I made a mistake. I didn't really know what to do with the extra wafers, so I left them in a little dish in the chaplain refrigerator. Now, if you know anything about these traditions, if you've grown up in one of them, you know what a gigantic faux pas that was. Fortunately for me, my classmate was very kind and took me aside privately and told me that really, once they were consecrated, the wafers had changed into something sacred. They had become Jesus' body. And you can't leave Jesus in the refrigerator like a sandwich. Well, what would you do with them? I asked him. Well, he said you would eat them, or you could bury them, since they are part of a body. Now, I was of two minds when I heard this. The UU skeptic in me thought that this was superstitious, maybe a little bit gross. But also, as a UU, I believe in relationship as divine encounter. And I was moved. So I just listened. And I began to think about why these words and this ritual may have been preserved and treasured by believers for thousands of years. Jesus of Nazareth could have just as easily said, let's share a meal together so that we can remember all the things that we have been through together as a community. Let us do this ritual to help us to feel like we are all one, no matter how far apart we are, and that we're all committed to working for justice and serving the poor and teaching the world about selfless love. Now, if Jesus had said that, it would not have offended anyone. And no one would have remembered it. There's something about a ritual of becoming one with each other where magic happens, something you can't explain. It helps us to know that we need each other as much as we need food, that we are part of one body. As our theology changed over the years, Unitarians and some Universalists lost this ritual. Many of us stopped believing that Jesus was immortal or saved people from sin, and we just couldn't find much meaning in it, or we couldn't feel sincere when we shared in the ritual. One of these was Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Emerson decided to leave parish ministry, and when he decided this, he told his church that it was because he did not share their views of communion. Now, it is also true that Emerson had little tact or patience for people. He didn't especially like the mundane parts of church life, budgets and leaky roofs and getting out the newsletter were kind of a challenge for a mind like Emerson's. But communion also really mattered. And that was, he thought, the breaking point, really. Around this time, the early 19th century, our faith was opening up to much more than Christianity. But bit by bit, we lost this ritual that bound the church together. And we needed something. We are concrete thinkers. We dwell in bodies with 5 senses. We need so much more than words to become one body, to have this sort of alchemy happen. John Robinson, a beloved minister at Eliot Chapel for 27 years, knew this to be true. He created the bread and cider communion that we do before Thanksgiving. Now, I remember the week that I first visited Eliot and started meeting all of you. This is called Candidating Week. And at the end of the week, after I've met everybody, people voted on me being their minister. So during the week, people were asking me questions about what I would do as your minister. And one of our youth asked a little anxiously, are we still going to do bread communion? Sure, I said. And I thought, wow, I sure hope that I like this. I loved it. I loved dressing up in my red and black wool lumberjack shirt and duck boots to proudly represent my Minnesota heritage. I loved learning about people's family recipes and their traditions and sampling their bread. I loved the bluegrass fiddles and the quilts and the impromptu dancing. That ritual helped me to become part of the Eliot community in a way that more than words could really have done. That ritual helped me to love you. We usually mention John Robinson when we do bread communion, but it's not about John. And John Robinson would laugh his head off if he heard that we thought it was. It's about so much more. It's about remembering that we are a body, we are a community. Remembering, that is joining the parts back together to become a body. It isn't belief that joins us together, but the fact that we need one another. In the 1920s, when Norbert Čapek was serving his church in Prague, a church with probably as many different beliefs in God or about God or not beliefs about God as ours, he knew that a traditional communion was not going to work for them. But he still wanted for them to have communion, that sense of sharing and connection, of belonging together. Čapek looked at the fields of wildflowers, even the weeds that sprang up at roadsides and along the walking paths, in the meadows, and in the showplace gardens of his people. They were everywhere, part of the shared landscape, something tangible that they could share with one another. So he invited people to each bring a flower to church to represent themselves and their unique contribution to community life. He knew that it would honor their differences, but it would also honor the beauty of who they were together. And because we are transformed by being in community, each person took a different flower from the one that they brought with them. Flower communion is also a ritual that offers grace, in my opinion. If you're new and you didn't know to bring a flower that day, or if you were too tired, or if you just plain forgot, many people bring extra flowers and insist, of course, please take one. Be included in our ritual. The flower communion became increasingly important to the Prague Church when they were under German occupation and war. Flower communion became a powerful symbol of hope and freedom and community that could persist in the most difficult times. They were times of fear and separation for them. Čapek himself was taken from them by the Nazis for speaking out. And they kept celebrating this ritual. They kept becoming the body. Do this in memory of me, yes, but so much more. We need to remember that we are part of something larger than ourselves. This is always true, but it's especially true right now. We need to come together to remember our worth and our value, to learn how to love one another. Part of the spiritual life is about taming the ego. You need to love yourself and then somehow forget yourself as you care for others, as you encounter real human beings in all of their human beingness. Barbara Brown Taylor calls this the practice of encounter. It's about learning how to be part of humanity, a living part of the body. So here we are, celebrating Flower Communion 2020 online, on the internet. And you may wonder, how can we do this from a distance? How can we become a body if we're separate? A few weeks ago, someone suggested that we ask you to take a picture of a flower you would like to share, or better yet, take a picture of a flower with your face next to it, a selfie, and send it to us. We didn't know how people would respond, but we received more than 40 photographs, and I can't wait to share them with you. It will not be the same as Flower Communion in our sanctuary. It will not feel the same, I know. But I promise you, I promise it will have its own beauty, and we will remember it always. Amen.
There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul.
Whenever Norbert Chapek conducted his Flower Communion in Prague, he would say some variation on this prayer as he consecrated the flowers. Infinite Spirit of life, we ask your blessing on these messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us, amid diversities of knowledge and of gifts, to be one in desire, affection, and devotion. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of life's most precious gifts. May we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do sacred and holy work in this world. Now may the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. Go in peace.